I would like to give some of my thoughts on a lot of your conversation on last week's show, which again, you did a fantastic job just going nuts by yourself for an hour talking about a super team assembled like Perugia who collapsed in two competitions. And the loss to Zaxa in 4, I mean, they lost the first 2 sets and it was over. In Champions League at home, and then they lose to Milano at home to get knocked out of the Scudetto playoffs. I mean, I think you said it really well last week. I think the most obvious thing here is that since that loss to Piacenza in the Coppa Italia semis, Perugia hasn't been a team. They did not use that as the galvanizing event to come together as a team. Instead, they remained fragmented. They were a bunch of very good individual players, but their team dynamic, their team system, and clearly something in their locker room, and including like on the way all the way up through the organization with Anastasi and Circi and everyone involved, that was a broken, fragmented team that was never able to come together. I think you said it very well. Another thing that I like that you said was the block defense, like in a technical perspective, the block defense that Perugia was using badly against both Zaxa and Milano was just not good. Like that should be a good blocking team. Like Flavio, Russo, Soleil, and like Leon, Semeniuk on the left, Gianelli, and whoever on the right. Like that and then Kalachi, I know he's old, but like he's been a world-class libero. Gianelli's a good defender. Position 6 guys should be good defenders. Like that was a bad block defense team, and that's kind of where Perugia would destroy people. Is when they would touch a ball, that's all they would need. They would keep it in play. They would give it to Leon at the top of the antenna, and then he would ruin people's lives in transition. And they just didn't turn any touches into anything. They didn't block any balls. They were leaving seams. They weren't communicating. It was just kind of fragmented. I think it was the same thing. I mean, you already went over all this, but help me out here. Do you agree with some of this stuff?
Oh, 100%, right? Like it's just, you could tell that there was no organization, right?
Yeah.
And especially like playing against Zaxa, and that's their team identity. That's one thing, right? Like Zaxa to me is the most organized team in the world. And I mean, how many different coaches have we seen them do it with now over the past number? This is 3 years, 3 different coaches, and they continue to do it, right? It's their identity as an organization. But for Perugia, there was just clearly no identity other than we have superstars, right? We have some of the biggest names in volleyball, and yeah, it was tough to watch. It was tough to watch them crumble the way they did, and to me, it was very obvious that they had some issues in the room, right? And you alluded to it earlier that this is a team that should have had maybe a closed door meeting, maybe kick out Anastasi out of the room because we know he's not coming back. There's no way he's going to be coaching there next year. And have a talk, but I don't know if there's anyone who's like, I don't know if they have anyone with the leadership capabilities that Gabi has for Vakifbank in that room for Perugia.
Man, I just don't know either. And I would expect that both Leone and Gianelli could be those guys. Like Gianelli carried the Italian national team for a full summer last year, played every single game, even when he kind of didn't have to, and was a well-deserved MVP of a world championship. Like that should be the leadership characteristic that Perugia is looking for, but just wasn't there. And another thing that you said last week that I liked is that it was hard to watch Perugia crumble like this. It was difficult to watch, and for some reason I found myself rooting for Perugia a lot of this year. I wanted them to win the Infinity Gauntlet. I wanted them to win all 5 trophies, and I couldn't quite put my finger on why I felt like I wanted that until you said it last week. You said that you enjoy and you appreciate watching greatness. And I do too. And like some of the first club volleyball I really ever started following was when Wilfredo Leon was in Zenit Kazan. And that was greatness. That it really, really was. Those Champions League series that he won, and like that match against Lube in like 2018 or 19 or whatever that was greatness. And Vakifbank last year on the women's side, greatness. It is fun to see greatness in volleyball. In a sport where there's no salary cap and money can buy success to a degree, I was excited about this Perugia team because on paper they were just going to be so dominant, and I kind of wanted to see it. I wanted to see just how good they were going to be. But now I think it reinforces something that I said on the show 2 weeks ago, that the method of building club volleyball teams has now been reinforced once again with the success of Zaxa and the failure of Perugia. Like you said, Zaxa is the most organized, both on the court and top to bottom in the organization. They are the most organized franchise in all of volleyball. They're about to go to a third Champions League final with a third coach. That's completely insane. And they've done that by building teams, not because they can buy all the star power, but because they have done a phenomenal job in building a team that works together, and the culture in that organization fosters that just as well. And that is the way to build a club volleyball team, not the Gino Circi's, Jerry Jones, spend all your money way. Zaxa is the model and Perugia is not. And although I was excited to see Perugia destroy people this year because it would have been fun, I am excited that the Zaxa method of building a club volleyball organization has once again proven to be the correct one. I think that is good for the game, and I'm excited to see how that affects transfer markets for years to come.
I think there's two things that come up for me when I hear you speak there. First and foremost, when you look at Gianelli and Italy, Italy is clearly, like, when Italy plays together, they're clearly a team with one goal and one purpose, and they're all on the same page, right? Everyone knows their role. Everyone knows what needs to be done. And to me, that comes down to Di Giorgi, right? That comes to Fernando Di Giorgi and how he runs that team and the way that he works with all of them. There was clearly none of that on this Piacenza team, right? And I think that's maybe where you were starting to see that frustration come out from Gianelli, where, like, this is how we should be playing. And I think maybe he took too much of Italy onto Perugia. But I have a hard time putting a lot of blame on Gianelli. I think some of it needs to be, especially with some of his set selections. But this is a guy who was serving tough, who was blocking, who was making digs, who was hustling, when we didn't necessarily see other Perugia players doing that. The second is, I think we're seeing the national team style of volleyball be emulated within club volleyball, right? And Zenit Kazan, those Zenit Kazan teams is a perfect example of once again a team all on the same page with one goal and one style of play. But when you look back, like, Leon wasn't the captain of that team. Like, Maxim Mikhailov was the captain of that team, and they had other superstars who were bought in, much like Matt Anderson. And then again, we see it with Zaxa. That's the way Italy played too. And more and more we're starting to see, for so long I had characterized professional volleyball as every year a team is trying to go out and get by the best players. And how many times have we seen year after year just teams with completely different rosters? And over the past 4 or 5 years, we've really started to see teams settle down, start to build them, start to work, like, longer term contracts. And I think that's really started to benefit professional volleyball as they're starting to emulate, having a team identity, right? And having a team that you can work with, and you're going out to get kids or new players who fit the identity, rather than just like, we know that these athletes are good, right? And I think a team, like, even though they're in a down year, Lube is one of those teams, right? They've got a mix of young and old, but like Nikolov is clearly like an offensive minded Lube type of player, and that's what they want to go see. Whereas once again, Perugia doesn't have that team identity. They can call themselves the Block Devils all they want, but they aren't a good blocking team, right? So they really, like, Xerxes and the rest of that Perugia organization needs to figure out who they are and what they want.
I totally agree. They are at a huge crossroads in their franchise. I have no idea where they go from here. I have no idea what's going on in Gino Circi's head right now. Probably a whole lot of this, and just a lot of angry Italian curse words, because they have completely blown it with the best roster maybe ever assembled. And I think we should save this for another show, Everett, potentially. But another reason why I kind of wanted Perugia to have success this year is because I so firmly believe in Wilfredo Leon. I really, really do believe in him. I believe that he is the best player in the world, and I was excited to see him get back to the top of the game where he belongs. And now I don't think we have a choice but to question his legacy a little bit. It sucks. I don't want to have that conversation because I'm a Leon fan. I believe in him. I love watching him play. I think that he's great for the game, but there's too much. There's too much in these last couple of years that is forcing us to have the discussion of what is going on with Wilfredo Leon. Why has hardware eluded him since he left Zenit Kazan? And I think we could do a whole hour and a half podcast on this and really break it down. And I think that we should. So we don't necessarily have to get into it right now, but it's a conversation that's going to start happening. I don't really want it to happen, but we can't avoid it. We've got to really assess, is the best player of a generation, quote unquote, is that really what he is right now?
Yeah, I don't know. I think we should leave it with this, Rob. Just a little note from the chat here. Rob, remember when you said you'd bet your life that there's no team in the world that could beat Perugia in a 5-match series?
I absolutely remember saying that, and it wasn't a crazy take, because the more, like, the longer a series goes, the better team is going to have more chance of success. And it was more than just the on-court stuff. It was another really good exercise in the effects of pressure on volleyball and on professional sports. I brought up the 2021 Olympics with the United States men a few weeks ago. That was the most crippling pressure that I have ever seen a team succumb to. I think the Polish national team has certainly felt a little bit of that. I think that this Perugia team felt a significant amount of that, probably the most I've ever seen at the club level a team feel and then collapse under massive pressure. Pressure is very real. If anybody ever says that it's not, they are wrong. They are lying to you. And somehow some team mentalities that go way beyond just who's on the court. Some teams, both club and national team, are able to handle that, and some of them aren't. And when somebody figures out exactly the recipe to that, they're going to make a lot of money winning a lot of games for somebody, because it's the last several years, both club and national team, pressure has been a consistent dominating storyline. This is just another data point of pressure beating an incredible team on paper.